All right. So that's a physical object. Now, what about when we look at an object that is transactional in nature? We're dealing with something conceptual. Let's see what examples I've got here. Let's take this interpretation of vital signs. This is another good one. When we think about what the nurse is doing, the nurse can do a whole lot of things, and the vitals can come to us in different ways. She can actually be looking at a gauge. She can be looking at a dial. She can be looking at a screen. She can be interpreting directly through the screen. She can be interpreting by looking at the dial. She can be interpreting by reading the results of, say, a monitor, okay, that has already effectively done the interpretation but is displaying the results of that interpretation, in which case maybe the nurse reads the vitals or the nurse prints the vitals. But the point I'm trying to make here is that we need to think about what is the interaction within this specific environment. You know, is she looking at an EEG? What is she using a monitor to, well, I don't know, you can insert whatever you want here. But we need to determine what this looks like. All right, let's take another example anyway. Let's say I've got and I'm literally making this up on the fly. This is the best part, right? So let's say I've got a delivery coming this afternoon, all right? And the delivery driver misses the delivery. Well, let's just map that one. No, maybe it doesn't miss the delivery, but let's say the delivery driver doesn't deliver the package, right? Let's start to decompose this. So the delivery driver rocks up and doesn't deliver the package. Let's start to get clear on what some of the tools are here and how these tools are being modified. Well, there's a couple things I have going on. And let me just drop in some notes here. So I've got, sorry, and you probably can't read this, so I'll make this a little bit bigger. Let's make it like 14 or something. All right, so what are we dealing with? What are the objects we're dealing with? All right, so I've got a package. I have a driver. I have my house. I have me. Okay. What else do I have? I mean, you can include things like the driver vehicle. You can include you can include anything you want. You can put the weather in here as an attribute. You can put the doorbell if the driver's interacting with the doorbell. I mean, I've just put my house in here. And let's include one for, say, specifically signature, because I've required a signature. Now, you probably already have some idea of where I'm going with this. But let's look at what's happening here. So the delivery driver fails to deliver a package. All right, now what's going on there? Okay. Well, in this case, what's actually happening is the driver does something with, say, my house. So what does the driver do to the house? What's the modification here? I think quite simply you could say the driver in the first instance maybe presents. Maybe the driver presents, at my house. The driver arrives. You could say, I think that's probably easy enough. So, and sometimes you'll get this situation where the question is like arrives at the house, or you'll have like in, or you'll have to, or you'll have little things like that that are attached to the modification. And that's fine to put them in here. I really like this to be one word. It just makes it a lot easier. So you can see most of these, right, are one word, and try to stick to that when you're doing this. It makes it much easier to read, especially when you start reading 3 or 4 objects together at once, okay? So in this case, the driver arrives at my house. All right, so the driver arrives at the house, and then let's say, let's ask you, what do you think is the next thing that's going to happen here? So the driver arrives at my house. What is the next thing that they're probably going to do? See if you can work this out. I mean, you're welcome to pause the video actually and see if you can work through each of these steps and see if you can arrive at what's going on here. So the driver arrives at their house. I'm going to say that the driver then probably knocks. Knocks on my doorbell. Now this is an interesting one. Knocks on my doorbell. Well done. How about they knock on the door? But they could knock on the doorbell, but if they knock on the doorbell, I don't know. Maybe that's the point of failure. They were banging on the doorbell, like, "Why don't you answer the door, Mike?" No. So let's say the driver knocks on the door. Okay. So, and this is again a shortcut. You can say the driver, you can say like hand knocks on door, right? Or, fist beats on door, whatever the case. And then already you're probably starting to think of, you may not be, but you're starting to think of, remember that idea of a dial, right? How hard are you hitting the door? How loudly are you banging the door? What is the door made out of? Is it a solid oak door? Is it made out of particle board, right? Because the question is going to be, which is coming to mind next, what's happening with me? Right? So the driver arrives at the house. The driver knocks on the door. Bang, bang, bang. What's happening next? Well, let's see if we can work it out. I think we're going to get a situation where maybe let's put the knock. Let's put the knock, and I'll put some question marks in here for you to think about this for a second. What's happening with this knock? And let's think about who we're trying to modify here. Okay, here's what's coming to my mind. So let's think about this. So let's put the knock. Oops. Let's put rings, and I'm just going to put rings through. Well, let's put the knock rings through the house. Okay? So the driver arrives at the house. The driver knocks on the door, bangs on the door, bang, 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 and then the knock rings through the house. Okay? So what needs to happen then? Well, if the knock is ringing through the house, I guess the action is back over to me, right? Okay. Now this one's quite interesting. I'm going to have to think about this here. So the knock rings through the house, and what is the modification on me or you if you're sitting at home? And again, you might want to pause this and think about this. Put some spaces in here. What's happening here? Okay, so let's put, and let's change this from me. I'll put me / you / homeowner. That way we can get, or maybe, actually let's just leave it as me or you. Okay. So what happens? So let's just, in this particular case, say that you, let's just say you miss the knock. You miss the sound. Okay. And notice I've put another shortcut in here. So driver knocks on door, knock creates sound, and you'd even go and say sound travels through house, right? Something like that. House dampens sound, or walls dampen sound, or sound waves are you can go to whatever level you want to go to here, but I'm just trying to get us through in this example. So in this case, let's assume the driver knocks on the door, it creates a sound wave, that knock rings out through the house, and then for whatever reason, and we're not going to get into the reasons why yet, but for whatever reason, say you miss the sound, okay, or the sound, let's say the sound is faint. Oh, that's a good way to do it too. Let's say, let's do that. Sound is, try that. Sound is faint. Okay, if the sound is faint, we've got this issue going on. Shoop. Pull this up here. Sound is faint, and then let's say you, oops. Let's say that you miss, let's say you miss the sound. Okay, and of course, with the driver now, because you're missing the sound, the driver's banging on the door, banging on the door, banging on the door. What's probably happening in the driver's mind, so we'll scroll down a little bit here. What's probably happening in the driver's mind is that the driver, let's say the driver interprets silence. And if the driver interprets silence, I'm assuming we're not dealing, this is my computer going so fast, look at how fast this is. It's not the computer, it's the fact that I'm in Australia and I have half a dozen kangaroos in the back. They're on a little treadmill, and sometimes or would it be a hop mill, not a treadmill? So they're on this little hop mill, and when they stop hopping, everything slows down. So the driver interprets the silence. And let's say what's happening is, again, we're talking about the interpretation here. Let's say that interpretation causes the driver to, whatever. Driver departs from house, something like that. And the driver, you could probably add in here that maybe the driver reviews the con note or the delivery instructions, and delivery instructions state signature required, or instructions demand signature, or instructions require signature, right? So you can build all of that stuff in here, but the point I'm trying to make is I'm just getting us through this idea that we're taking an object, and that object, which in the beginning we're thinking of as a tool, right? That tool is modifying another object. And in some cases, when I say modify, I don't necessarily mean that it has to change, but it can contain, it can support, it can hold, right? In other cases, it can lift, it can heat, it can do whatever we want it to do, right? So hopefully this is starting to give you an idea about what we're talking about here. But we've got the element now. We've talked about our objects, what objects are. And now we're actually starting to look at how one object modifies another object, and we call this a function. When we get into later videos, I'll show you how we take a function and we actually start to add values, right? Again, I talked about the flame heating the pan. We can capture the duration, we can capture the actual heat in temperature, and we can start to make an equation here, right? We can look at things like, how many times does the driver knock on the door? How long does the driver stay there? And we can put a value there. How many attempts does the driver make before the driver returns to the depot, right? Or depot if you're in the States, right? So they might make 3 attempts. So if we're looking at a failed delivery, we're going to go through maybe first attempt, second attempt, third attempt. After 3 failed attempts, the package is returned to the depot. Okay, so getting you thinking about what that means to play with an object, modifying another object, and how objects have settings. It's not simply binary. It's not on or off. It's not present or not present. Okay, all right, hope that helps, and we'll see you again in future videos. Again, if you have any questions on this at all, drop them in the comments. I'll explore these with you, and other people who are watching the videos will also help explore this with you, I'm sure. But this is where it's starting to require some thinking on your part, okay? Good luck.